All right. Sound check. See Farsight, he's my sound check guy because he's always the first person here. How am I sounding tonight? See Farsight. And Sun. See Farsight and Sun. So I'll try not to use too much profanity tonight. All right, we're good. Welcome, everybody, to CanHammer TV. It is week X of isolation time. It is a crazy time in the world, and the craziness continues. There are some people talking about possibly sometime lifting restrictions in Canada anyway. There are some places around the world who have maybe started. And so we'll see what happens. Black Ice, welcome. Bruce Gordon, welcome. Hope you guys are safe. Hope everybody's safe. It's we'll see. I mean, the places that started to lift, mostly in Asia, they got a second burst, like right away, within a week or two. And so, you don't want to go like too early, like all this work was to soften it down. If you go too early, you kind of just wasted all of it. So let's take it slowly. We've already been doing it this long. What's another few weeks? M. Anderson, welcome. First time catching the streams live. New to Custodes. Thank you for the channel. Thank you very much, M. Anderson, for tuning in and watching. And thank you very much. So yeah, we'll be doing Tactica tonight. There's not really much else to talk about because there's not much happening right now. There's heated debate going on right now in the TO forum, ITC TO forum again, about starting events, when to start events, who's starting events, ITC points. Some people whining that it's unfair that some parts of the states get to get points and some places don't. Why you'd whine about such a thing, I have no idea, given the current climate of the world. Why you'd whine about ITC points? Like, seriously. Get some perspective, people. But anyway, internet is the internet, so we'll see. I just encourage people as a frontline healthcare worker to take things slow. Don't rush it. I know everybody wants to get back to work. I'm like everybody else. I need and want to get back to work, but you can't waste all the effort we've just put into dampening this down. That's all I'll say about it. Anyway, Snoop DeVille, welcome. So guys, if you're new, this is Custodes Tactica episode 15. If you are new to CanHammer or to the Custodes community, welcome. Please check out all the other Tactica. You can find it on our YouTube at CanHammer. It's a whole playlist, 1 to 15, plus a few bonus interviews. And consider joining our Discord. The link is right there. And that link is active, I think, for the next 24 hours. But anyway, if you have problems with it, just let me know. We can give you the most recent one. And join us up. Lots of talk all the time. Great amount of anticipation for our Psychic Awakening. Although when that is coming, nobody knows right now. But one of the last 3 books, and we are the second in a row. So lots of anticipation about that. So do check us out and come and join the community. It's super friendly and very helpful, I'd like to think. Do check out all our content on YouTube. Maybe some of the most up-to-date and competitive Custodes resources on the internet right now. A couple of shout-outs. Shout out to Dan at Red Dragon. Not only is it our sponsor, he's been doing 3 times a week deliveries around the region of everybody's hobby needs. So thank you very much, Dan, for keeping going, and I hope he's doing okay. Shout out to my brothers down in San Fran for making amazing beer. Anchor Steam beer, really good, and I like it, and I got some, and what better time to drink than during a pandemic? David Valerial, welcome. The other shout out I want to give is to John Scrivens, aka Scrivo, of Honest Wargamer fame, who drew my cool little Custodes slightly less Asian Darren right there, Shield Captain Darren. And so I'm going to use this dude now for all sorts of silly things. Maybe I'll make a t-shirt of it. Who knows? If you want a t-shirt of my Custodes character, let me know. We were going to do, actually, I was going to do a 40K show for Honest Wargamer to kind of fill their 24-hour calendar because we're 5 hours behind. And that was going to be just kind of like a 40K talk show. And I think we're still going to do it, but obviously all this hit, and so there's no point doing it right now. But that's why this drawing was made of me as a kind of, it was going to be like the splash screen. And if you missed it, I was on Honest Wargamer last week and had a great chat with Rob. Rob's one of my favorite people. And so hopefully we'll be doing that again soon. Shout out to Rob. He has, in fact, the one and only Duncan Rhodes on his live stream tomorrow. And that starts at 12 o'clock in the UK, so 5 o'clock here in Eastern Time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time Zone in the morning. But he's got the one and only Duncan Rhodes on his show, so that's pretty cool. I guess it's pretty hard to get Duncan on his show before when he worked for GW, but now that he doesn't, he's free to do whatever he wants. I actually asked Duncan one time, I think it was at Adepticon, I snuck up to him in the lineup for lunch one day. He was just standing there by himself and asked him if he wanted to come on. He said, yeah, I had to ask his bosses. Super nice guy, though. And he was constantly being assaulted while just trying to eat his lunch by people wanting his autograph and sign this model. And one guy wanted him to sign a Land Raider with, like, a white scar, like, white paint on a brush. And it was like... Dude, that was crazy. Speaking of Land Raiders, tonight we'll be talking about the little used models of our Codex and Army. Little used or of little use? That is the question. And so we'll be talking about it and talking about these various models and see if we can get something out of them. I'm a firm believer that... things often have untapped potentials, and maybe not to listen to everybody when you're coming, especially if you're new to the the Codex, to the faction, and you like the look of something and you want to try it out, then go for it. You might come to the same conclusions that we all have. You might come to different conclusions. Your mileage will vary. It depends who you play, how you play, what you play. And one thing's for sure is almost all of these models are amazing. So do give it a try. I wouldn't go out on a limb and spend as much money as I have on useless Forge World models, but you could, and you might have fun, and you have a nice collection. So we're going to talk about those models today. If people have questions, please put them down below in the chat. I'll answer them as I go. If you have questions, you can ask them at the end or as we go, whatever you like. You can ask questions at any time in the Discord, and so it's a very open community. We'll answer whatever questions. There's no stupid questions. David Valerio wants a t-shirt with my Custodes character on it, which is cool. He also tried double Land Raider with Trajan, which is pretty disappointing. Bruce Gordon just sold his Land Raider, so he doesn't want me to change his mind. And there has 4 golden ones. Well, I have one I'll show you guys later. It is not gold yet because I cannot bring myself to paint it. It's just, unless it proves itself, it's just not worth it. Joshua Erlob, welcome. Used the Land Raider for 10 to 15 games. Lasted longer than expected and wasn't horrible. Would have been better with Trajan. Well, we're going to talk about it too. So if anybody has questions, please post them and we'll try and get them as we go. Do what these guys have been doing, which is post your play experiences with these units if you have any. I have played most of these units, maybe not in the most competitive of settings, but enough to kind of give opinions, and that's what it's all about on the internet, talking heads giving opinions. So let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is actually the one Custodes model that I do not own, although I own this Dreadnought in other factions, is basically the same, is the Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought. Now, the problem with the Custodes one, it's a Dreadnought, so it doesn't get the +1 save. And the problem with it is that it has like almost no weapon options. So this thing is a Dreadnought. It's got 2 up, 5 up, okay, and it has 10 wounds, so it does degrade quickly, and even though it degrades, it doesn't have the benefit of having more wounds. So if you're going to be more than 9 wounds, you might as well have way more wounds so that it takes longer to degrade you. But if you just have 10, now you get the crappiness of being able to be shot, and you don't have much margin before you start to degrade. And the worst thing about all the dreadnoughts is they degrade. Okay, so you pay all these points for this thing which has X amount of potential, and then you do a few wounds to it, and now it's got less potential. Now that drop is less severe for the first tier or two because Custodes already hit on 2s and everything, but it's still pretty pronounced. I think most Venerable Contemptors hit on 2 anyway, so even then it's not much different. Starts off standard with a multi-melta, which is possibly one of the worst weapons out there, and then you can replace it for 1 point more with this 6-shot assault cannon that's strength 7 instead of strength 6, and 24-inch range, which is it's not filling a need it's not filling a need for us. It's not filling a gap. It's still short range. It just doesn't help us. It just doesn't help us. And that's it. It has like no other weapons option. It has 1 fist. So it doesn't even get like an extra attack for having 2 fists. I don't believe there's an option to take a second fist on it. No, there is not. And then it has the Contemptor thing, which is 6-up Feel No Pain, which hardly ever helps you. And then the minute it takes like 5 wounds, it goes down to 3s and 3s. So it becomes a Space Marine Dreadnought. So it's just not good. And point-wise, I've got them all here. It is 134 points. That's with the multi-melta. 1 point more for the assault cannon. So it's not expensive. It's actually cheaper than a Guardian unit. So if you had to play a Dreadnought and you wanted to just sit it on the back as an engineer, then you could do that. And it's cheaper than a Guardian unit, but it's probably not going to survive as long as a Guardian unit. So there's nothing, while it's not bad and it's fairly cheap, I'd say the other Dreadnoughts are better, the Forge Roll ones. Of course, there are some formats you can't play Forge Rolled in, and then generally you just don't get much for your points. You don't get much out of it. If it gets touched, it's okay because it got the fist, but it'd be cool if you could take 2 weapons on it, if you could put like las cannons on it. If you could put las cannons on it, it would be more expensive. But now you're talking something that's probably useful. If you could put 2 twin lases on it, like a rifleman that's hitting on 2s, and it benefits from all the Custodes stuff, like now you're talking a little bit more useful. A real dread to just park at the back and ping stuff with 4 reliable las cannon shots. So now we're talking use, but you got this 24-inch assault cannon or like a multi-melta. Oh, it's just not good. And you're paying like 20-something points for the multi-melta or the assault cannon. It's just not good. So on top of all that, if you actually buy the actual Contemptor Dreadnought model, it is one of the worst looking Dreadnoughts in the game. It is like just so bad. And so like at least buy a Forge Rolled one and like whack a gun onto it and make it look a little bit better. It's just not nice. So if you did have one and you want to play it, then you are actually forced to move it up. To move it as you go, because 24-inch isn't going to get you very far, and it's just so vulnerable to being taken down with a 5 invuln only. Like lots of things will take it down these days. And then you get a -1 for moving, because they're heavy weapons, and then so if you have to move into position, now you're hitting on 3s, and if you get degraded once, now you're hitting on 4s. It just becomes really bad. So it's just not good. I would advise people to steer away from this Dreadnought. I don't see any uses for it. If people have found uses for this Venerable Contemptor from the Codex, please let me know. I'd like to know if you have, but I just don't see it. Okay, so that's the only Dreadnought we have in the Codex. It'd be interesting, so in terms of what you can do with Dreadnoughts otherwise, so people don't really know because I guess they don't play Dreadnoughts a lot, but there is a stratagem that lets you, for 1 CP, give a reroll aura from your Dreadnought. Now, this is not that helpful most of the game because we got Shield Captains, we got Trajan around giving reroll 1s. We don't need the Dreadnought to spend a CP to give us that. But if you're playing, say, like especially in the old days, like a Telamon at the back, hey Sean, we will be talking about the Telamon. If you have like a Telamon at the back, especially in the old days when it had crazy range, and eventually you broke your castle and you had to leave your Telamon at the back, then he could, for a CP, give himself that reroll 1, which was great. So keep that stratagem in mind if you are playing Dreads. But generally that's only going to apply to the Telamon because it's the only one with any kind of decent shooting. And as we'll find out later, the Telamon rest in peace. So so we don't often use that stratagem, but there is a stratagem. I presume that we might get the -1 damage strat that the other Marines factions get. However, we might not, because we only have one Dreadnought in the Codex. They're not writing rules with Forge World in mind right now, so we might not get anything for the Dread. And whatever, no big deal. Tom, welcome, Tom. So, so that's cool. So let's talk about the other Dreads. Let's talk about the Achillus Dread. Okay, so the Contemptor-Achillus Dreadnought. Now, this guy is a badass model. Okay, this is a badass model. He's got this giant spear with a las cannon on it. Basically, he's got these wrist guns. It's tall. It's got this. It looks good. It's got so much detail and gilding on it. It's hard to see there. It's just the light here. So it's got all the gilding on it, and even the back looks cool. It looks like a beefy model. It's got the big Aquila on the top. That is a cool model, okay? You may do well to magnetize the arms so you can change the weapon loadout. I like to magnetize the body for transport purposes, but that's a cool model, okay? So use this for if you're going to buy the Contemptor, use this and just put like a gun on there or something instead of the crappy GW one. That's a cool model. And it's infinitely posable. Every piece is separate. So I gotta admit that this Dreadnought sometimes makes it on a list when I'm just building lists for fun, because he has stuff in his favor. He is only 140 points with his standard loadout, which is with the Lastrum Stormbolters. So that's 8 shots of 5-1/1, which is good. Lowerish range, but that's good. He also, in his spear, then has basically like a mini las cannon. 2 straight shots, so that's good because it used to be D3, which really sucked. 2 straight shots now, 24-inch range, but 8 -2, and that horrible Custodes D3 damage. So you could ping a few wounds with that. It's not. It's kind of just built into the cost of the spear. So it's nice to have. And it means that you drop down and you're not completely useless. You're putting 8 shots of infantry killing in one place. You're putting a couple of kind of mini melta shots into something else. So he can be useful even dropping in at 9-inch range, at 9 inches away. And then his other weapons options include the 8-inch, D6 heavy flamer, which whatever, that's nothing special, and you can't use that when you drop in. And then he can have the twin Adrathics, which are 18-inch assault 2, so shooting 4 shots. And the Adrathics, of course, are 5 -3, 3, which seems like a very tempting profile, but the strength 5 really does hurt it. Still, 4 shots of that might be nice for taking out Marines. That's really good for taking out Marines. So that's another consideration. The biggest downside of the Adrathic is the points. So it's another 10 points. It's another 10 points for those destructors, but it's worth considering. I personally like the Stormbolter shooting because I think it has a lot of utility. And 8 shots from that, hitting on 2s when you drop down, that can really help you kill, wipe out the remnants of a unit or a screen or something. Okay, the big thing about this guy, so he has a 5-up invuln as usual, and 2-up save, but he has 10 wounds, so unfortunately, he does start to degrade as well, but that's no different from anybody else, and he has the usual kind of venerable stuff, and then he does some mortals on a 4-up when he charges in, which is kind of cool. His big thing is, though, he gets 4 attacks as standard, and then he gets strength 14. So strength 14 is great. You're wounding all vehicles on 2s, reroll 1s with Trajan around. You're wounding everything else on 3s or 2s. So it's pretty good. And then it's -3 and it's min 3 damage. D6 but min 3 damage, which is great. I love D6 min 3 damage. So you are going to do good damage with this guy. and potentially a lot of damage, at least 9 to 12 damage. So he is pretty good in combat. You have to kind of use him to hit big things. I think that's where he's most effective. He's also pretty good at killing Marines. Maybe okay at Centurions, although there's potential that you take 2 attacks to kill a Centurion, which is kind of sucky. That 4 wound threshold. So for 140 points, he is decent. Even if you have to sit, as I always say with these dreadnoughts, even if you have to sit him at the back as an engineer, he's less points than a 3-man guardian unit, but probably easier to kill. Depends on what the opponent's shooting at it. Yeah, so that's always the trade-off. The problem, and the other thing about this dread, and the problem with all the dreads is, you got to get them where they need to go. Turns out this dreadnought moves 9 inches. He moves faster than the rest of our army. It's a fast-moving dreadnought. So it's not a problem to walk him up the board and save you the 1 CP to deep strike it and then 3 CP to homer him in. What you don't want to do is drop this guy down at 9 and he gets stuck out in the wind because you failed a 9-inch charge. So you need to probably better to walk him up the board, but then you need to have other things for your opponent to worry about so they don't ping off the dreadnought. Unfortunately, most people see dreadnoughts, other than Leviathans and Iron Hands dreadnoughts, as easy kills, and they're probably right. And so, they just get pinged down. Even if they took like a Melta in Overwatch, they degrade on the way in. And ultimately, that is the problem with all of these dreads. But if you have to pay 140 points left, if you're thinking you got 140 points left in your list, that's not an uncommon amount of points to have left in the Custodes list with nothing to do with it. You can't buy all those Misericordias. That's stupid. And you can. That's 1 biker, like 1 Terminator, maybe a couple of extra Guardians here or there, a bunch of shields, another shield captain which doesn't really have much use. You might often find you have 140 points spare, or if you drop a shield here and there, you might get 140 points to put a dread in. So keep it in mind. It's not first choice for using 140 points, but it has some utility. And as George is saying in this Twitch, it's good in combat. So if you don't want to march up the field, you could leave it at the back and it could be countercharge. People don't anticipate that. Most people think dreads are crappy, although with the Marines, people are a little bit more suspicious of dreadnoughts now. So the old disdain that people used to have for dreadnoughts is slowly going away. And I have fought against Space Wolf dreadnoughts, and they're even worse now with the Codex. So do be aware that people do target dreadnoughts. It's not that big, not that hard to hide behind a standard rune. It hides behind the tall hills in ITC, so it's not that hard to hide. So that's the Achillus. I think it's worth considering sometimes, depending on what the rest of your list is, what you intend to do with your list, and what you want it to do. But it does have some use. Unlike its brother, the Galatus Dread. Let me just find the thing here. Or Galatus, I don't know. So this dreadnought, which is basically this thing, except with a sword and a giant shield. I actually have one in my shelf. I've never assembled it. In my opinion, less useful. Now the Galatus, just for comparison, is more expensive, 155 points, and it does not have weapon options. So you got the sword and the shield. Now the shield does give it 4+ invuln instead of a 5+ invuln, which is better than a 5+ invuln. But damn it, is that the world's largest storm shield that's not 3-up invuln. It's a real missed opportunity. If you're gonna give it a giant storm shield, then give it a storm shield. I think if this thing actually had a 3-up invuln, it would be a strong consideration for maybe including it. Right now, the Achillus is better. And cheaper. And it gets -1 to hit in combat. Okay, whatever. It's still not hard to kill. It's same T7, 10 wounds, and it degrades. So, yeah. And then instead of, it has almost no shooting. It just has a heavy 2d6 flamer on the sword, which is great, but not great. And then in melee, it gets extra D3 attack. So that used to be, I can't remember what it used to be. I think it used to get 1 attack or something like that. But then they in the finalized beta rules, they upped it to D3 extra attacks. So it could potentially get up to 7 attacks at strength 7 minus 3 damage. So that's pretty good. It has the straight 3. D3 would have really sucked. Would have made this into the bin. But straight 3 damage is pretty good, minus 3. But strength 7 does suffer a little bit. It really relegates, it really screws you up hitting any vehicle, particularly T8s. You've got to get a bit lucky, hooning on 5s. So if it was just a little bit stronger, strength plus 2, strength plus 3, strength times 2, too much to ask. I mean, yeah, it's just... The strength 7 really kills it, just like the strength 7 killed the Gladius. So it's like, it's not great. And yeah, it might be really good and wreck something if you roll that 7 attacks and then you get lucky and you roll some 5s, and so now you're doing like 6, 9, 12 damage. But the Achillus does that much more reliably, has way more shooting, and is cheaper. And things that are going to shoot at a Dreadnought, 4-up invuln, not going to make a huge difference. 3-up invuln would have made a big difference. Yeah, so people are saying, if it had +1 to their save, like normal Custodes, it would be cool, but it doesn't. If it had damage 2 on the flamer, like if it was a stronger flamer, that'd be cool, but it doesn't. So, it's just like, eh. Now, if you add in the +1 attack banner, then you start to get a little bit cooler, but then you can do that for the Achilles too. So, yeah, I just don't think it's worth the extra points over an Achilles. Achilles will have more utility for you. Now, this guy probably better as a engineer standing at the back and doing literally nothing but tanking wounds on a 4-up invuln instead of a 5-up invuln, but then 155 points might as well take Guardians. It's almost the same price now, so... So George raised the point of having multiple dreads, and sure, I mean, I've seen a list which had, I think, 7 or 8 dreadnoughts. And sure, I mean, you can run a list like that. Some armies, I don't know how good that is, to be honest. I've never tried it. Sure, if you put 3 of them together with the banner, it may be hard to kill, but the rest of our army is 4-up invuln as well, and it's not that hard to kill. So, yeah. Okay, and next we're going to talk about my favorite Dreadnought, which I used to love using, and I don't use it anymore, unfortunately, is the Telamon. So, the Telamon is, in my opinion, except maybe that Thousand Suns Forge World Dreadnought, which is pretty cool only because of the livery, the Telamon is the coolest looking Dreadnought in 40k. This thing is so cool. Like, look at this thing. It's just, boom, 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 boom. And it's like some dude in there, and it's just amazing. Another amazing kit. So much detail. You can do so much with these flat panels here, design-wise. It's super articulated. You can make it whatever pose you want. Of course, you got to magnetize the arms so you can put all the different weapons on it. And buy 2 of each weapon is a bit of a pain. You have to buy them separately and buy 2 of them. And so this is like an awesome model. And it is big. It is like half the size of a knight. Here's it is like almost twice, a third, at least 40% taller than the other Dreadnought, which is already pretty big. This is a big mother, okay? Just for reference, here's a Land Raider. This thing is taller than a Land Raider, okay? So, it's an awesome model. So wouldn't it be so cool if it was actually good? Now, the old Telamon was good. So if people remember my old list of, it was bikes and Aquilon characters, and then 2 Caladius tanks, and a Telamon, and Vexillus. And that was a fun list. 4 CP, it was a cool list to play, and the Telamon anchored the back. So Low Fat Ponage, welcome, and Philip Daniels, welcome. You just started a Shadow Keepers theme force, which was what this guy was kind of modeled after, this black scheme. I didn't paint this, Nick painted this, but this is pretty cool. So the Telamon would just sit at the back, never move, would have 72-inch range, and could just ping things off. Strength 9, -4, straight up 3 damage, reroll wounds against vehicles. It was like instant dead tank commanders, like 12 wounds off a knight. Like it was great. Rhino's dead. Like it would just ping 4 Centurions easily. It was so good and so hard to kill. If they ever shot at it, -1 to hit. T8, 14 wounds, 4 up invuln save. Like, yes. And that, I can't remember how many points it was at the time, 270 something or something like that. And so, it was expensive, but it did well for its points. And then it went through a bunch of changes, unfortunately, and now it is a shadow of its former self. So it's still as hard as it was to kill. So it's 2 up save, 4 up invuln, with the banner around -1 to hit, 14 wounds, and it doesn't degrade until you've taken, 7 wounds, 7 wounds. So, it's still pretty hard to kill, but why would you want to kill it? 'Cause it doesn't do anything anymore. The other cool thing about the Telamon is it moved 8 inches. I believe it used to move 9 inches, and they nerfed it. Somebody see if they can look that up. I'm pretty sure it used to be 9 inches, but maybe I confused that and the Achillus. Anyway, so it's still pretty fast for a Dreadnought, and it's a big Dread and moves 8. Now, a Knight moves 12, but whatever. Knight's much bigger. And then all its ranges got halved. So the 72 went to 36. The accelerated cannon is only 48. That was like the big one. So Telamon was movement 9, yeah. So the big one was the range of the strong guns and the accelerator, and it just got super nerfed. And then the strength got nerfed of the accelerator, and it got triple nerfed, and then it went up in points. It's 282 now with the standard guns. So okay, so if you want to use a Telamon, which is not an unreasonable thing to want, because look at it, you have 2 options. It no longer has the crazy range, but if you're running it with the accelerators, the question for you is then, why are you not playing a Caladius? That's basically, it's cheaper, it moves faster, it's slightly less tough, but it's going to do you way better than a Telamon. You can get 1.5 Caladiuses for the price of this Telamon. So if you're going to run it with the accelerators, you might as well run a Caladius and save the points and do something else. Because the Caladius has longer range too. So don't do that. So the only thing you would put on the Telamon is either the storm cannons or fist action. Don't do one of one, because it's just half as good at shooting and half as good at combat. So either pick the fist Rocky Balboa Telamon or pick the double gun storm cannon. Okay. Now, you could argue, though, if you want the storm cannon, then you should just pick a Blaze Caladius. And that is a perfectly reasonable argument, because at least the Blaze Caladius is still strength 9. But this Telamon does have 2 extra shots. So maybe that makes up for it. I don't know. You'd have to do the math on that. But you'd have to get in range, because it's only 36-inch range, whereas the Blaze Caladius is 48. So, and the Caladius moves 14 inches and can shoot with no penalty, whereas the Telamon gets a -1 to hit penalty by moving. So before, you could just stand still and just wail at things and never move. Now you have to move to get into position. You're -1, you take some damage, -2, and then it becomes a waste of 300 points. So that's the big thing. I don't think they're going to give it Machine Spirit, because there are no Dreadnoughts in the game that have Machine Spirit, as far as I know. So it's unlikely it's going to get that. So, again, outclassed by the Caladius tank. But if you do that, you're going to have to play it in the middle or close to the front of your army. You're going to have to move it up into position and hope its tankiness saves it. But, I mean, you see how fast tank commanders go down these days. It has a 4-up invuln, so you last a little bit longer, but a couple of lucky las cannons, and this thing is, like, stupid. So, it's just a waste. So, the question people always ask me, how can we fix the shooty Telamon? Give it back the range. Give us back strength 9. Actually, just reverse everything that you did. Make it a lot cheaper, like $225. Or give it machine spirit. So these are some ways you could do to make the shooty Telamon a little bit better than it is now. Not quite as good as it used to be. I don't know who decided that the Telamon needed triple nerfing. It wasn't killing people. It didn't win tournaments by itself. It's not like the freaking Castellan Knight, which survived the whole year. Just for some reason, they decided to triple nerf the Telamon into oblivion and rest in peace. Okay, so that brings us to Punchy Telamon. Okay, so if you get fists on the Telamon, so 2 fists, of course, you get a discount for 2 fists over paying straight for 2 fists. This thing is now 262 points. And it no longer has, like, hardly any shooting. You get this plasma projector, which is like 2d3 8-inch flamer, 6 - 2 1. So nothing crazy to write home about. But you get extra attacks. So now you have 5 attacks, 6 with the +1 attack banner. And you hit on 2s, of course. You are strength 8 times 2, so you are strength 16. So you are wounding everything in the game except for a Mastodon on 2s. Trajan around, re-rolling 1. So you're auto-hitting, auto-wounding, -3, so most things don't get invuln. Oh, +1 attack banner don't work for it. That sucks. And straight 4 damage. So potentially, you're hitting a knight in combat, unless it makes some 6-up saves, you are doing 20 damage. That's crazy! You are killing a Centurion each swing. That's a whole unit of Centurions gone, almost. 4 was excessive before, but now we know that 4 is not anything. I mean, freaking captains can have 4 damage Thunderhammers, and you got 4 health things around. So 4, so everybody's dream is to get their Telamon in there and just whack some shit. And then they got this thing, which is 2-up, 4-up, T8, 16 wounds in their lines that they have to deal with. Unfortunately, a lot of things can deal with that. But still, that's pretty strong. So that is kind of, if you're going to use that Telamon, I would use it like that. It's cheaper than the shooting versions, and it's a lot more fun. But it's more difficult to use. You almost certainly got to homer it. I think you got to homer it. Unless you're playing Dawn of War, which is actually a deployment that you generally don't want. I think you got to homer it. If you try and run it out by itself, it's going to go down. You have to either run out with the whole rest of your army, give it something else to shoot at, but again, people are going to be like, "Oh fuck, I better kill this thing." So I think you got to spend the CP to put it in space, and then you got to spend 3 CP to homer it down. So yeah, I think it was Tyler. I can't remember who it was. Tyler, possibly, who was running a triple Telamon list. That's like 900 points of Telamon. You'd run 2-up and drop in 1 with a homer, and that's almost like playing like a knight list, like 3 mini knights. So I think that's fine. And if you have the CP to spend on it, then go ahead. But generally, you might have something else you also want to homer in. You're only going to have 8 or 9 CP. It gets expensive. But I think if you're going to play a punchy Telamon, you can't have it sitting there having just failed a 9-inch charge. You just can't. It might survive if your banner's nearby, but you just can't. Like, it's just a lot of points to be sitting around wagging his dick in the wind. Like, it's just painful. But, yeah. So I think the Telamon has some potential coolness there if you give it a couple of fists and just go ham. Yeah. So that's the Telamon. So I don't think in our book any of this Forge World stuff is going to get extra rules or anything, so I wouldn't expect any of these things to get buffs unless the book includes stratagems that point at things more generically, like Dreadnought as opposed to Contemptor Dreadnought. We'll see, but I wouldn't be surprised if none of the Forge World stuff gets touched at all. So those are the Dreadnoughts. If people got questions about the Dreadnoughts, George is saying, 3 Telamons, Trajan, Shield Captain, 3x3 Battalion, and 3 other Dreads. And that's pretty fun. But yeah, if people have questions about that, let us know. It's fun talking about the Dreadnoughts, even if they're not all particularly good. But they are just amazing models. I really should put my Galatus together. It's an amazing model. Whatever. I also don't want to paint any more gold. Okay. On to the next model of little use or little used models. The Land Raider. The Venerable Land Raider. Yes. Okay, so Land Raider being Venerable now makes it hit on 2s, basically. Shooting. And then it gives it a Feel No Pain, I think. Yeah, 6 up Feel No Pain. And of course, Land Raiders have Machine Spirit, and the Land Raider can carry 5 Custodes infantry. Now, what's interesting is it doesn't separate out Terminators and normal infantry because they're all kind of big, so any infantry will work. It actually also carries the what's it, dude? The Venatari, because they're also infantry, although usually jetpack things don't fit into transports. So that's fine, although, they might as well just fly. But so it can be useful in terms of protection. Let's see how many points this thing is. So this thing is 322 points. That's with the twin heavy bolter and 2 twin las cannons. That's a lot of points. And it is, T8, 2 up save, and a no invuln. No invuln. Now, no invuln. If it was going to get an invuln, it would be 5 up, right? It wouldn't be affected by the +1. Do you need a 5 up invuln on a 2 up save vehicle? Probably not. Only -4 things are going to make a difference. -3 things, las cannons. -2, it's not going to matter. So, sure, no invuln. At least we're not paying the points for it, but we are kind of paying the points for it. 2 up save, no invuln. Machine Spirit at least, so it moves. It moves 8, I think. 10, and so slower than a normal vehicle, and it has shooting. So 4 las cannons, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, wounding on 3s, rerolling 1s. D6 damage kind of sucks, but it is what it is. That can do a lot of damage. If you're interested, have a look at the Charity Hammer stream. I played on Down Under Network on YouTube. Down Under Network. They streamed my game at Charity Hammer against Zach, and he was playing a Warhound Titan, and I was playing the Meme List, which people graciously donated money to see me play. So Trajan, a bunch of Wardens, I think 2 Land Raiders and 3 Gladius tanks, something like that. 3 Gladius and 2 Land Raiders, something like that. And that just put out a ton of shooting without having to move at long range. And 2 out of 3 games, I just killed the Warhound Titan in like 1 turn, 1.5 turns. And in the other game that I lost, it was Dawn of War, and the Warhound got in, but still almost died to Wardens who failed to kill it by 1 wound. So if I think a Land Raider could be fun, not competitive, but fun. But you have to take more than 1. At least 2, maybe 3. But that's like 1,000 points. But if you sit at the back with buff characters, a -1 to hit banner, and 2 to 3 Land Raiders, you are putting out, 8 to 12 super high accuracy las cannon shots. Now, if you have that much stuff you need to kill with las cannons, then that works for you. But generally, whatever. The knights will be quaking. So yeah. So I think if you're gonna run land raiders for fun, you should run at least 2. There is a strat for land raiders. I'm just gonna look it up here because I cannot remember for the life of me what it does. Oh yeah, so network machine spirits 1 CP. In your shooting phase, choose a venerable land raider from your army and at least one other friendly venerable land raider within 6 inches of it, and none of them suffer penalties to their hit rolls. So that's pretty cool. No penalties to hit rolls. Now, that's not for moving because they don't suffer that already, but for minuses. So, yeah, Eldar Flyers, stuff like that. So, Eldar Flyers don't like an army with 2 or 3 land raiders, but sure. Sure. I mean, you saw it to be probably putting all of one land raider into one flyer, all of another one into another flyer to be sure, because D6 damage is like that. So you're still only killing 2 flyers in that turn, and then those flyers doom jinx and your land raiders are dead. So it's still not a great matchup. But yeah, so for funsies, or what we like to call the meme list, land raiders all the way. At least 2, maybe 3, a bunch of Cladius tanks, maybe a Telamon. So yeah. So as Brian is pointing out, anything with minuses to hit might be, if you have a couple land raiders, you'll wreck those things. Disco Lords, Alpha Legion, stuff like that. So I think the land raider is fun. I don't think it's super competitive, but lots of people have land raiders. If you have land raider and you want to just spray gold and have some fun with it, then go for it. I think if you brought a list to a RTT, 16, 20 person RTT, triple Caladius, 2 land raiders, and maybe one of the super heavy flyers and a couple of buff characters, I think you would go you would win 2 out of 3 or all 3 games just because nobody can kill that much T8 and you just table people. And that's the nature of the mech list right now, right? So we talked about that before, the foot list versus the all mech list. And the all mech list will table 60% of your patients in a tournament and then lose hard against the other 1 or 2. So it's kind of fun, and so you can go for it for sure. The other thing about the Land Raider, of course, and George just bring that up now, is that it's not fly, so if it gets touched, it gets bad touched. And it can't shoot the next turn. It really sucks. 322 points, can't shoot. So, if you think that a knight is just a little bit more expensive, or any of our big flyers, it kind of limits its utility. How many points would have to go down for it to be considered? I think if it went down to like 250, I might play them. Because then you're comparing just the output now closely to that and the Caladius, and you're paying a little bit extra for durability, and you're not getting as much movement and fly. So that's like the trade-off, right? And a lot of that cost, of course, is 4 las cannons. You have to remember, that's 100 points. So, 250 is probably never going to go to 250, but if it got cheap, sub 300, you think about it, maybe. Or if it got fallback and shoot or something. I don't know. It's never good. No land raiders have that, but and then the thing about bringing 2 land raiders just to use the stratagem is if you lose one, then you're screwed. It's kind of like the Fire Prism thing. It's like any of those. It's like the Necron Flyer thing. It's a gimmick that can be stopped, not too much difficulty. Low Fat Honage, would you put anything in them? I think you can. But it depends. There's no need to. We're fairly tough as it is. You just hide behind a rune, and even snipers have a rough time getting at our characters. So you can. Yeah, you can. You totally can. And when you're inside, of course, you don't buff anything. So that's the problem. Seems like a loss to put buff characters inside. Exactly. So if you put it inside, then your buff characters aren't buffing anything. They're not -1 to hit. They're not re-rolling. Yeah. One game watched where the player used those giant corn land raider choppy things to hide the buff models behind them. You mean like a Lord of Skulls? Yeah, so the Land Raider's big. You can hide guys behind it, for sure. You can use it to block line of sight. And, you park it on the middle objective and you've got other things going around killing people, then, people might not shoot the Land Raider. But, it is 322 points. So you're going to have a lot less of the other shit running around. And, yeah, the Lord of Skulls is pretty good right now, I've been told. Lord of Skulls is also a lot bigger than a Land Raider, I believe. Okay, so I won't spend too much more time talking about Land Raiders, as cool as Land Raiders are. I mean, it's too bad, because like Dreadnoughts, they're a seminal vision of 40k is the Land Raider, right? And, the commanders in the fluff always ride in Land Raiders, but they're just... ever since, as long as I can remember, they've not been great. As long as I've played, and so it's too bad. Okay. And that's our only Land Raider. So, let's talk about the big boys. Rade, this is Anchor beer from San Fran. It's really good. And my thoughts on Magnus is that he's a chump. Okay. First, we'll talk about the Orion. My Orion's on the shelf up there. It's in a few pieces. I don't want to bring it down. But basically, the Orion and the Ares are our two former Lords of War, now become flyers. And that was actually a nerf. Because as Lords of War, they could hold objectives. They could do all sorts of things that you can't do as a flyer role. Or aircraft now, I guess they would be. So that's too bad. Again, there were a few high-profile tablings by triple Orion or mechless running Ares or Orions that maybe contributed to them getting a bit of a nerf. Nobody ever tabled nobody with a Telamon, so that triple nerf was completely unexpected. But some adjustment to these flyers was probably coming because some people had won at like Nova and shit, like the Invitational with like triple Orion, and that was the thing. And why was triple Orion good? Well, because it was like playing triple Knight. They're almost as tough as Knights. They have native -1 to hit, -2 with the banner. They can move anywhere. You can't really move block them. And they had a lot of shooting. A single Orion has a lot of shooting. It's got the Arachnus beam, which is doing 3 + D3 damage. And then it's got a lot of smaller but high volume, decent strength shooting. And then it can also carry things, but whatever. People wouldn't carry much in there. It can carry the Dreadnoughts, a Dreadnought, and then a bunch of Custodes. And then it has Machine Spirit, it's -1 to hit, and it had a 5-up invuln. So it was pretty good. It's pretty good. And currently it is 488 points, which I believe is a pretty big hike. I think it was like a 50-point hike or something from what it was before. So it's almost 500 points, which is too much. It's too much. I mean, come on. 500 points, I don't care what you are, 500 points is too much. And so, I think the Orion, you don't see it as much now because now it's priced too high. But it does have a lot of shooting. And I think if you're going to run an Orion, you're running it, there's two ways. You could run it in a foot list and put everything in it and then take it up. I think somebody in the Discord was doing that. He put his whole army in the Orion, except for the banner. And then after being -2 to hit in the first turn, you would shoot forward, have to survive one turn, and then the Custodes army would be delivered right to where it needs to be. So that's kind of cool. But that's still a 500-point transport. And then it would just fly around and shoot things. So that's cool. You could use it in a mechless for sure. So triple Caladius, a couple of Land Raiders, or triple Caladius, triple Pallas, and an Orion or an Ares, to top it off as the big flyer. So that is a mechanized, super fast, can't hide from it, a lot of range shooting type of list. And that can be fairly successful, as I say, like the usual mech list. And then, or you could try and run the old, triple list, which is just not going to have enough stuff because it's 1,500 points to run 3 of them. But it can be fun. And the other problem with the Orion, of course, is if you're buying real Forge World, it's $500 US for it. Now, it's a lot of resin. It's a big model. And so it's on the gradient if you compare it to things that are smaller or things that are larger, like the Mastodon or the Thunderhawk. It's priced as you would expect on that gradient of resin, but it's a lot of money. And it's a bit of a pain in the ass to paint. And it's very heavy. And so, but it's a cool model to have. And actually, I used to think the Orion was cool until I saw the Ares. And then now I really don't like the Orion because it's just like a box at the back. But so that's one way to use it. More recently, since the Orion got super nerfed, is the Ares has been used in a few lists in the same way, except for it's not a transport, so you wouldn't run it in a foot list to put people in, but you can use 1 to 3 Ares, or you could run the Ares with other mech Custodes, so triple Caladius, triple Pallas, Land Raiders, and because the Ares just flies around, and the Ares has 2 things for it. So it's as tough to kill as the Orion. It's only 415 points, so it's like 73 points cheaper. And it is a gunboat. So I guess they put a big premium on the transport capacity, which we don't really need. So the Ares has the blaze cannons, like the Orion, but it has this super Magna Blaze cannon, which does 6 plus D3 damage, D3 shots at strength 14 minus 4, and 72 inch range, so you can't hide from it. So that's a lot of damage, but it's only D3 shots. But potentially that's like 18 wounds. More. Potentially the max potential is 27 wounds. So any vehicles are dying to an Ares. The other cool thing that it has is the bomb, and it can do this twice. It can drop bombs and up to 10 d6, and on 4-ups it does mortals. So that's a pretty good bomb. And it can do that twice, and it flies around very fast. And the Ares is cool. It's way cooler than the Orion. So this is my Ares here. So it's a big model. That's how wide it is. It's almost as wide as my shoulders. It's pretty tall. That's how tall it is. Almost as tall as my head. And it looks cool. So it's got this cutout at the back, and there's the reactor for the big gun. And it's a cool little flyer. And it's got the little snout gun. So it's definitely a cool little model. So if you were going to buy one of those big flyers, I would buy the Ares. They are completely separate, so you can't. It's not like one kit that builds 2. Unfortunately, they're completely separate because but the only difference is here. The only difference is this U part here with the reactor. The Orion is like a solid block, but it's a different kit. You can't convert one to the other. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, I think if you're going to use it Ares, that's what you use it for. You use it as your big flying knight in a list of, I guess you could put it with a foot list, just as air support and heavy firepower. Or you run it in a mech list. That might be interesting to try. I have to pull up a list. So like a battalion, 1 hammer unit, characters, and an Ares. So you use the Ares instead of a second hammer unit. That might be interesting. We should try that. Huh. Now, being able to keep up with it to give it the reroll is important. It's not vital, but it can really help its efficiency. Especially the reroll 1 to wound. A 1 on your big cannon, you rolled 1 shot, like that's kind of sucky. And the -1 to hit, making it -2 in the first turn obviously helped it from getting blown off the table. But that might be an interesting list to try. Somebody try that on Tabletop Simulator. So that is the Ares. So that is the units that we wanted to talk about tonight. So if you got questions, please post them in the chat or ask us on the Discord. The Discord link is right there. To summarize, these are little used units, partly because most of them are Forge World, and Forge World is expensive and difficult to get. A lot of formats don't allow Forge World at all, And so you don't see that. And then the Codex versions, the Land Raider and the Contemptor Dread, are just not good. And so these are kind of situationally useful, but often fun units. So if you're playing a casual game or you're playing in a competitive but not serious, then you could certainly run these units, throw them in your list, and have some fun. And they're gonna kill stuff. Like, this stuff will kill stuff. It's just most circumstances not worth the points, or doesn't do enough for its points compared to other things you can get. But don't get me wrong. You put any of these things in your list, and they're gonna kill stuff. Just will they kill enough? So that's about it. Put your questions below. Next week, I may not have time to do an episode, but I'll try. If we do an episode next week, or for sure the week after that, as voted, the topic is the many uses of Tanglefoot Grenade. So possibly one of the best stratagems in the game, Tanglefoot Grenade, has many applications, and so we're going to go over some of them, and maybe I'll demonstrate a few on the tabletop. And so that's going to be the next Tactica. Episode 16 is on the many uses of Tanglefoot. And then the other topics that are coming up, let me just look on my notes here. So we're going to do an episode on bikes, use of bikes. And if we don't get around to it before the Codex, we'll definitely do it after Codex. But, the use of bikes, revisiting bikes, how we used to use them, how you can use them now, best use of bikes. We're going to have an episode on soup. People really wanted to talk about soup. And while, the purpose of the Tactica is to talk about how to play pure Custodes, we could do an episode on soup. And then we're going to do an episode at some point on ITC secondaries. What our army scores well, what our army doesn't score well, how to pick, when to pick what, stuff like that. All right, so we have a question here. So Low Fat Pony says, fingers crossed we get a plastic vehicle in the next 2 or 3 years. Thanks again for insights. Yeah, I don't think we will. We're not going to get a new Custodes model for some time now that we got all the Forjo stuff, remember. And so they really, probably GW thinks that was a real big bone thrown to us. So, and then we got Christopher Walken and his girlfriend. So probably nothing much. Sean Stryger, what's your thoughts on our recent slaughtering of the Primaris Marines? So apparently, I've been reading this bit of fiction that they put up on Warhammer Community, where this Knight Centura, the sister of battle, and the shield captain just slaughter like a bunch of apparently traitor Primaris Marines, has caused a lot of ripples in the community for some reason. I don't really fully understand it, but it's caused a lot of ripples and conversations to go on, and some outrage. Calls of racism. Anyway, it became clear in this fiction that Custodes really don't like Marines, and that's understandable. And so now everybody thinks that our book involves some sort of anti-Marine stratagem. Now, we do have an anti-Black Legion stratagem. Some people don't realize that because we never use it, and nobody plays Black Legion. But I made a joke today, Fury of the 10,000. For 1 CP, all melee weapons do +1 damage against faction Space Marine. So who knows? I mean, that could happen. But they obviously blame Space Marines for all the issues and for the Emperor and all that shit. So that'd be funny. But as I said to people, they don't base their rules on the fluff. That much is for sure. And Custodes itself is a great example of how it's not based on the fluff. So, what book is this from? It was just some fiction that was put on Warhammer Community, Rad-A, on the upcoming War of the Spider book. Yeah. Emperors over Marines. M. Anderson, what are we supposed to do versus Grey Knights? They just hide behind and shoot us and drop 1 billion mortal wounds. Yeah, it's tough. I don't have any magic ways of beating Grey Knights. You hope for a bad player, fail their powers. If they fail astral aim, they're not doing anything to you. But even if you get in there, like, you don't necessarily want to charge paladins either, you know, because -1 to wound, transhuman, you're not going to kill them and then they'll kill you back. Or if you do kill them, they fight you and they die and then you die. You can't trade with them because they generally come out on top. Strike's not too bad, you know, 1 mortal wound, no, that's not too bad. But the paladins are really hard to kill. And we're not the only people who struggle against Grey Knights, so, you know, don't worry about being singled out about that. We'll see. We'll see what Sisters bring us. They may give us a real thing against Grey Knights, but maybe, probably, likely give us nothing of any special use. But we'll see. Grey Knights is tough right now for everybody. Sean Stryker refused our orders to stand down. It's refusing to wear the Emperor. Yeah. Cool to see Grey Knights get some love. Yes. Such a tough matchup. Yes. It's their fluff. Recent short story in the Psychic Awakening. Yes, that's where it was in the. It's probably going to be in the book, but it was on Warhammer Community. What did you want of Sisters of Silence to be fitted in? Yeah, so talked about this a bunch on the Discord. I see 2 ways they could do it. So given that we have a HQ unit that is basically a custodian and a sister together, hopefully not 366 points, then they're going to have to give a keyword that joins the 2, which is probably going to be like Talons or Talons of the Emperor. So therefore, this sells me. So they're probably going to release like a Knight Centurion or an HQ datasheet, and then the sisters will probably stay elites. I would like them to be troops, but they probably will stay elites. And so you could run a vanguard of sisters probably. God knows why you'd want to do that, but you probably can. And then I think if you run sisters and custodies together, you can be part of a Talons detachment. And if you are a Talons detachment, you might get some special rules. And so hopefully that's where some of our new power is going to come. And hopefully that is not at the sacrifice of our +1 save and our OBSEC thing, which if we lose that for sisters, unless the rules they give us are really good, is totally not worth it. So hopefully it gives us additional rules and not at the expense of our old rules. And then I see 2 ways. One is you just run units of sisters in your detachment of custodies, and so now you have a bunch of easily killed T3 3-up save girls running around, probably not doing much and giving up kills. In which case it's going to be less than useful unless, of course, the Talons rules are really good. And then you just run 1 sisters unit to stand at the back out of the way and you use the rules. The other way they could do it, which I hope is what they do, because that's so much more fluffy what we read, and it's not unprecedented because of Death Watch, is they let us put single sister models into units. Any units, not just Guardian units, hopefully, but you just slot a sister model, like in the fluff, into a unit, and she now becomes, T5. So it's a bit harder and you can hide her, but she is a Blade of Wound 2. And she gives that unit some of, or maybe all of her Psychic Abomination rule. So that would be cool. So it makes that unit untargetable. That unit has an aura of psychic suppression. That would be a cool way of us getting to use sisters. Because then also just random Imperial suit don't get the same benefit from using sisters. We should get more from using sisters than, like a Blood Angels army or whatever. And that's fluffy, and that's the way it is. We always work together in the fluff. So if we can slot sisters models into a unit and that gives us their benefits and we can protect them, which is exactly what it's like in the fluff, that would be sweet. And then that detachment is a Talons, and we get 1 extra rule or 2 extra rules. Who knows? And then a bunch of stratagems that are usable only in Talons detachments or by a Talons unit. That would be cool. Let's see what GW does. But that was what I would like to see sisters being integrated with us. Let's see, where did I leave off? The next chapter approved is the AdMech and Knights book, and then it's us. Grey Knights are solid, Thousand Suns, Successor chapter. Old Sisters rules extended the soulless bubble for each unit. I prefer them to be like Space Wolves, Grey Shields, Heroes. Cool interview with the Honest Wargamer. Thank you. That was super fun to do. Yeah, sorry, I'm not familiar with the Space with Gray Shields, but I would like to have them not give up easy kills and still give us their benefits. So that's why I feel like integrating them into each squad would be cool. Also, then you could buy one Sisters box and have 5 models to integrate. Because I think the way we have to play right now, and I don't think that our PA is going to change the way we have to play, it just using a unit of T3 girls just sitting around is just going to be a liability. Yeah. So I hope their integration is like that, and that it gives us protection against psychics, and that's cool. Sisters will be troops for sure. I don't know, man. I wouldn't be too sure about that. I just hope they get the Emperor's Chosen ability, so they get... Yeah, so that's what we want to know, is how their inclusion is going to change our army rules. They would have to change all the banners and everything to affect talons. Like, they'd have to change all the keyword effects of all these auras and stuff. So it might not. Who knows? Depends how much effort they put into it, GW. Okay, any other questions, guys? Okay, so thank you very much for watching, everybody. We're slowly getting more and more excited about our book. I hope it's going to be good. It'll give us something to play with anyway, new stuff to work on, and hope everybody's staying safe. I'll publish the schedule later this weekend for next week. As I say, I might not be able to do one next week, but we'll see. And we will definitely catch you guys next week. So stay safe, keep social isolating, keep painting, and join the Discord. Discord's right there. And see you next time.